Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Jen Thompson, and I want to thank you so much for returning to the Return to Jesus podcast. I am very excited for our conversation today with my friend, the very talented Mikala Albertson, the author of Ordinary on Purpose, and also Everything I Wish I Could Tell You About Midlife. Both books are must-reads. So let me give you a little more information on Mikala while she's waiting there patiently. Dr. Mikala Albertson is a board-certified family practice doctor, author, and well-being advocate who is passionate about women's health and healing in the imperfect bodies we actually have, which I love so much. She's the author of the book Ordinary on Purpose and inspires readers every day to stop striving for perfect lives or some unattainable cultural ideal of beauty and wellness, and instead aim for wholehearted living through a gentle, achievable, sustainable approach. That is amazing. Mikala, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Thanks. And I have to be honest with everyone. So this is actually take two. Mikala and I were recording earlier up in my son's room where I typically record the podcast. And it just stopped. It just stopped. I went away and then she went away. And so we're starting over. Thankfully, we were only, like maybe 20 minutes in. So this is just another reason that I love Mikala so much. She's so easygoing and just gracious and just very go with the flow. She is the kind of person, she's the friend that everybody wants to have. I am telling you all this right now.
Thank you.
So,
this is just life. This is how life goes.
This is how life goes.
Yeah. If this is the worst thing that happens today, we're doing okay.
That is the absolute truth. That it's a pretty good day, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, we'll hop in, Mikala. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, the first part of the questions are going to be more faith-based, specifically patterns, habits that you have built into your day in the season of life you find yourself in currently that help you to connect with God. So the first question, Mikala, is when you hear the words return to Jesus, what do those words mean to you? And what does this return look like in your life?
Yeah, I love the idea of return to Jesus. I love your podcast. I'm so excited for your book. Like, I learned this phrase from you, and I love that. And I have used it many a time. Return to Jesus means to me just peace. I think it's like a peace offering. And so I am working on this, but I'm very quick to get a little bit frazzled by life, actually, and to sort of feel like I'm in the whirlwind of all the things that I can't control. And right now, as like a 45-year-old woman right in the middle of midlife, I feel like that's a lot of things. I have 3 teenagers and a tween and an elementary school kid, and my husband works long hours. We have a 20+ year marriage. I've had a lot of career transitions this last couple of years. I have a new book out. I mean, there are so many things in my life that I have a lot of ideas about and, ways that I wish things would go. And then that doesn't always happen. And generally, my response is to just feel very anxious and to hop on the hamster wheel and to sort of like ruminate on all of those things and think about how I can fix that or think about what I need to do. And I tend a little toward anxiety, and that idea of return to Jesus is like, hey, you don't have to carry all that.
Yes.
You aren't in control of all that. You aren't in charge. And your worrying about it isn't actually helping anybody, especially you. And so when I can remember to return, it just like is this release, I think. And honestly, that only lasts sometimes minutes for me, or maybe part of the day I can feel that. And then something will happen and I get back into it again. And the wonderful thing about it is it's like available to us. That idea, Jesus is available to us at all times. We can just continue to return and return and return. So
yes,
I have to practice that a lot.
Yes. Me too. You are speaking my language when you say that. Because all the things, I mean, all the things that you just mentioned, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
happening.
What?
And the rumination, that's for real. I mean, I can relate. I also am prone to anxiety. So
Yeah.
just that it's so easy to like look at the to-dos and start thinking about all the things and just be like, oh, there's just so much. And the peace, like you said, it's a peace offering.
It's a peace offering. Yeah.
It's
And
a peace offering.
I will just find anxiety, because actually we're pretty good over here right now. Like we aren't going through any big tragedies. My children and my husband and my family, we're all healthy and well. Like we've definitely been in harder seasons, but I guess it's one of my gifts is to find something to worry about. Right. And so, yeah, it's funny because I will just be like, what is the matter with you? Everything is actually pretty good right now, but I still hop on that wheel and just get going and spinning. And yeah, I need
It's
that.
like for some reason when you were talking, I was envisioning like a old holy sweater, like a sweater that's like stretched out and the whole it doesn't really work,
Yeah.
but you're so used to putting it on before you go outside, and then you get outside and you're like, wait, this isn't really doing anything for me. But that's I feel like I pick up that anxiety too. And I don't know why that image just came around. It's like this, you're just comfortable in it,
Yes.
but you don't want it and you don't need it.
Yes.
So those are good tools that you mentioned. Just that return.
Yep.
Just remembering to return. So awesome. All right. So the next question for you, Mikala, is what are some spiritual practices and habits you have incorporated into your life that work for you in the season you find yourself in currently? Because I think it's really important to note that every season is different. And
Yeah.
what worked a year, 2 years ago, a decade ago might not work anymore. But sometimes we hold on to these things past the point of expiration, I guess.
Sure.
We need to find some new habits, some new things that work in that current season. So what works for you now? And also, are there any practices that you have had to let go because they just don't work anymore?
Yeah, I think I've had to evolve in what I think spirituality is. I think years ago, and as a kid, even I thought, I mean, spirituality wasn't a term I was thinking about then. And to me, spirituality and religion were one and the same. And so, my spirituality was really formal and it was sort of scheduled in on Sunday if we went to church on Sunday. And it was like, going through the motions of getting my sacraments and things. I was raised Catholic. And it's only really been, really over time. I think it takes a long time to learn that. And so I've had little breakthroughs, I think, throughout my life. But now, as a woman in midlife, I'm realizing spirituality isn't all the time, everyday thing. And so I have learned to incorporate prayer kind of throughout the day without even really thinking about it. And so it's much less formal than it ever was. And it's just me acknowledging that I'm not alone, that someone, something, some presence, Jesus, God, I am loved and someone is with me and I'm not alone. And I can reach out to that being all the time. And so my spirituality is now in these like little moments, these little snippets throughout the day, often in the car, often, when I can't sleep at night, or silly things where I hate folding socks. And you know how when you have like a bunch of kids, you're like, there's so many socks, but I have started like praying over whose ever socks I'm folding. And so I just
Love that.
yeah.
I love that. Sorry to interrupt. I love that so much. Okay, go on.
So I never really understood the idea of pray without ceasing, when prayer to me was like this formal, memorized prayer. Like, well, how do you live your life doing that? And now that I'm understanding the concept of spirituality a little bit more, it's like, well, your whole life can become prayer. all your activities can become prayer. I don't remember to do that all the time. As I said, I tend to get a little bit frazzled, but when I do, gosh, it's just, you're so much more connected. It's available to you all the time.
Yes. And I absolutely adore how you said you take this thing that you don't enjoy doing. And I feel you with the socks. I don't
Yeah.
know what happens to half the socks. I don't know. I actually have a basket in my laundry room full of like just
Yes.
solo socks.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm holding on to them for. The other sock isn't going to like walk in the door one day. That's a whole other issue in and of itself. But the fact that you have taken that time and turned this time you don't like into a sacred time, that is just so encouraging.
Yeah.
That you can evolve the mundane into the sacred. I just think that's just very inspiring. And I actually want to ask you a question because in take one, you also mentioned something else that I really loved and found to be incredibly encouraging. You mentioned that you also are doing a walk and a study with some of your friends. And so I wondered if you could tell us just a little bit about that, because I also think, like you mentioned, returning to Jesus constantly throughout your day, the praying continually, but then also that it can be a community thing, I think is really cool. So can you tell us a little bit about that, the
Yeah.
walk and talk with your
Yes, the
friends?
walk and talk. We've been doing that. I think it's probably not quite 2 years. It's probably maybe more like a year and a half that I've been walking with a couple of wonderful, amazing women friends in my neighborhood. And we get together on Monday mornings typically and just go for a good walk. We have like a little path in our neighborhood. And I have it on my calendar. Like it's just, that's what I do on Monday morning as I meet with Michelle and Angie. And it started out as a Bible study, and we went through all of the New Testament and just kind of talked together about it. And now that we've gone through all of that, it's just become sort of topics. So my friend Angie is sort of the leader of this, and she will, maybe it's something she heard or read or something in the week before that she'll come up with some topics for us. And so I think it was last week, it might have been the week before, that it was how we are working to make our homes holy, which I
Love
love
it.
the idea of that, because just to think on that, and maybe it comes down to socks and, yeah, I mean, for me, I let the socks build up for like a month before I fold them. They just collect in a basket, right? And people mostly pick out, but then when the basket is just socks, that's when this happens. Um, but yeah, like she just, this week we're just thinking about gratitude, and we're thinking about ways that we've seen God at work in our lives in the past. Because sometimes we don't realize until retrospect that we look back and can see his hand working in our lives. And so it's just a really great way to start the week, and a little bit of grounding. And I love that I have two people to talk about that stuff with, because there are other friends that maybe we don't jump into that as much, but that's kind of what I do with these two women quite a bit. And so it's been a wonderful thing that I hope can just continue forever. Live
Yeah,
here. Yeah.
it sounds amazing. I mean, it really does. And the fact that you have these like topics that you touch on, I would imagine you just get to the meat. I feel like we all, I guess I couldn't say all, but I feel like most people I know in my life just long for a depth, like a
Yeah.
depth of connection with people where it's not just, how's your day? What are you doing this week?
Right.
Not that, and there's nothing wrong with those conversations, but I just feel that people want that. So I love that for you, that you have that place where you can just
Yeah.
get
And
right into it.
I'm like incapable really of small talk.
That's
I
what
might be
I love about you.
I might be
That's
an
what I love
exhausting
about you.
person to talk to, because it's like,
No way.
whoa, talk to me for 5 minutes and I'm like, tell me about your deepest fear. Just I don't know. But
That's
I
what I
love
love
that.
about you.
Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. That I get to do that with them. So, and it's
That's
fun to
that's
think about that topic throughout the week. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would do that otherwise, but to think, oh yeah, like how does my home feel holy? Or what am I creating here with my kids? Or what do I want it to feel like? Just different things.
Well, that in and of itself, yeah, like I've never thought of that in all sincerity, the concept of a holy home. You just saying that it makes your mind just
Yeah.
go off in all these fantastic directions. So that is awesome. Thank you for that encouragement. One last question. So I think I forgot to say this earlier in this episode, but what we are focusing on this season is grace. So
Mm.
that is what a lot of the questions will kind of funnel through that. So the next question for you is, what does grace mean to you? Because grace can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So when you hear the word grace, what does that mean to you?
I love the word grace. It's one of my favorite words, actually. Can you have favorite words? But it's one of my
Yeah.
favorites. And I think it
Yeah.
is like this permission to just let life be as it is and to let you be as you are in the life that you're living. And so I think it's just what I try to write about a lot. Life is actually pretty ordinary mostly. We mess up a lot. We're superhuman. We are living in these bodies that we actually have. And there are some things that we can control. And then there's a whole bunch of things that we can't. And so how do we live fully in the circumstances that we have and the bodies that we have and the lives that we're living? And I think grace is what just kind of blankets all of that and allows us to do that. And so it's kind of like this bit of mercy and forgiveness and love, like all wrapped up into this one word. So I don't know that we can really get through life without grace.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Can you
Yeah.
imagine? I mean, it would be so hard. And in hearing you talk, it does make me think of all of your writings. Your writing speaks grace. It's just woven through every message I feel like you put out there.
No, thanks.
So that just makes me even more excited to have you on during this season, because it's like you are such a gracious person. And yeah, it would be very sad to live without accepting that gift, right? It would just be, oh, it'd be so hard.
It would be so hard. And I don't think that that's what we hear a lot, right? Which is, I mean, that's kind of why I wrote this book, is it's like we're just sort of inundated with how we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to look and what we're supposed to do and, the best practices and the best ways for everything.
Yeah.
And if we're not doing that, if we're not meeting those guidelines, if we're not at like this, some sort of beauty and wellness ideal, then we're just losers, right? Or failures. But I'm like, no, I think we have to throw a lot of grace over all of that. And so I do start the book out with that. Like, let's offer ourselves just this really hefty dose of grace as we move through our lives. I think it's the only way to move with any peace and purpose through our lives is with grace. So yeah, I try
Yeah.
to be like the antidote to some of the marketing and, all that messaging that we've heard since we were little, right?
Yeah. And you are, I mean, really, truly, your words are that reminder that we don't have to buy the thing that people are trying to sell us,
Yeah.
that we are enough as we are. And honestly, if we try to be everything that we're told that we have to be all the time, we will break.
Yeah.
Something will give. It is not possible to be all the things and do all the things. So this is a perfect segue into our next
Yeah.
section. Excited to share with you that I have written a book titled Return to Jesus, an invitation to abide with him in every beautiful, stressful, or tedious moment. It is a dream come true, and I could not be more thrilled to share with you that this book is available online at stores such as Target, Walmart, Amazon, Christian Books, and more. The book will be available on April 15th, 2025 to purchase in store as well. And I just really appreciate your support. It means the world to me. I could not do this without you. And I'm just so very grateful. So be sure to grab your copy today. Again, it's Return to Jesus, an invitation to abide with him in every beautiful, stressful, or tedious moment. Let's talk about it. I'm so excited. I love your book so much.
Me
Okay.
too.
So, Mikala, what inspired you to write Everything I Wish I Could Tell You About Midlife, a woman's guide to health in the body you actually have?
Yes. Well, I've been a family practice doctor out in clinic for 18 years. I have a fellowship in women's health. I did that at the end of my residency. So I've always had a heart for women and their health and their stories, especially, and sort of helping them along the way. And I early on in practice, I would hear from women during this midlife time a lot of similar things, which is just the struggles we've already mentioned on this podcast. We're tired, we're worn out, we're trying to struggle with these teenagers and these marriages that we've maybe had for a while, and job changes and transitions. And then suddenly our bodies are like not cooperating either. And it's this really hard time. And women would come and say, like, do you think I have a thyroid problem? Or like, what is this? Is it my thyroid? Do I have a brain tumor? Like, I don't feel like myself anymore and something is wrong. And now, I think the buzzword is perimenopause, right? We weren't talking about it enough and didn't maybe have all the tools and the language that we needed around what was happening in midlife for women when I was first coming out of training. That was close to 20 years ago. And when I started this book, even telling some friends that I was going to write about this perimenopausal journey and transition, they were like, what's perimenopause? But now I feel like even a couple of years later, as the book's coming out, it's like a trending term, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I I had been hearing those same things from women, and then I like became one. And I became a 45-year-old woman with 3 teenagers and a tween and just all of the things. And alongside that, I was just seeing what marketing had to say to women and all the solutions that were promised to us and how the answer is out there somewhere. You haven't just found it yet. I just wanted to offer a different way and a little bit of a guide through, and just a reliable and truthful source of information for women to turn to along this journey. So it's full of personal stories. It's full of patient stories, stories from my friends. I have a chapter in there about my friend Angie, who I was just talking about on the walk. And it's also got a lot of pertinent medical information as well that I hope is kind of easily digestible, that then women can learn from and take to their provider and maybe have further conversation about the bodies they actually have and the parameters of their health and their lives.
Yeah, that's so great. It's funny that you mentioned that the perimenopause kind of being the buzzword, because I think often how hard it would be, because I'm 46, almost 47, and I think, goodness, I'm glad I'm going through this now and
Yeah.
not even 5 years ago. But also, it's like I open up my Instagram and it's like every single ad is directed toward like menopause. I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
how they just know my age, and so they know that this is what I need. Like, what is going on right now? But but I'm just grateful. And I'm grateful for your words, because I feel like these are conversations that weren't being had,
Yeah.
and they need to be had because it is a challenging season. Like you said, your body's changing, but you also have the pressures of your children getting older, financial strain, sending kids off to college, parents getting older. You're trying to figure out, who am I now? What do I want for this
Right.
second half of my life, if I'm fortunate enough to have a whole second half of life? None of us know. And so I think there's just so much. So and maybe we don't know how to talk about it with people. Maybe there are things happening within our bodies. And even you mentioning the thyroid, I feel like that for most of my friends and myself going through this season of life, it does seem like the thyroid's the number one. Everyone's like, it's got to be my thyroid. So I
I need this
appreciate it.
easy answer. Yes, I did.
So
Yes.
I appreciate that you're like, while yes, the thyroid is a very real thing and issue, but there's more. Like it's
Yeah.
not always just the thyroid.
Yeah, and
So
I I worry about that a little bit now with perimenopause, because we are talking about it a lot, which I love. We need to be talking about it a lot. But two things. The first is that I think that marketing, as it does, has realized that there has been this gap. And they're like, oh, how can we fill this gap? And so now they are filling the gap with all the advertisements that you're seeing and all of these promises for women and all of these easy answers and magic pills and, simple solutions. And I really do think women are as confused as they have ever been. Like, oh, so I'm supposed to be on hormones or I'm not supposed to be on hormones. Should I be taking testosterone or not? Is it pellets or what do I do? Should I be on that weight loss drug or what? Because we're hearing all of these things at the same time. So that is hard to navigate. It's hard to navigate as a provider. It's got to be a million times harder to navigate as a woman in midlife, going through all the things and trying to decipher what is science and what is not, and what is evidence-based and what is not. And so I try to speak to that in here. And I do worry that just like we've thought, oh, it's got to be my thyroid. I'm gaining weight. I'm tired. It's got to be my thyroid. Now perimenopause is the new blanket diagnosis that we're using. And I do worry that we'll get tunnel vision on that and that we'll think every symptom that comes along in midlife, oh, it's got to be hormones. It's got to be perimenopause. And I do still encourage listeners and my readers to say, well, let's still take a stepwise approach because yes, heart palpitations could be a symptom of perimenopause, but they could be a symptom of something else. And we have to kind of rule out that your heart is looking okay, that you don't have an underlying arrhythmia, that you don't have, before we settle on that. So I do worry that any and all symptoms will be chalked up to hormones and perimenopause now that women have a lot more education about it. And I just don't want us to get tunnel vision on that. And so that is why in the book, there's a chapter on perimenopause, but there's also a chapter on the thyroid and adult ADHD and body image and depression and anxiety and other mood disorders and sleep and sex and preventive care and all the other things that come along with women's health.
Yes, that's so good. So important. So important. Awesome. All right, Mikala, next question for you. What are some key takeaways you hope your audience will glean from the book?
Yeah, I don't want women to be afraid of healthcare, of their health, of the things available to them. I think anything that is anyone who's trying to sell you stuff that's kind of fear-based, like if you're not doing this, you're missing out. I don't like any of that. Like, I'm hoping that the book will give a lot of relevant background information for women so that you feel educated about your body. You feel unafraid to talk about it and to bring up these issues. And then you feel empowered to make decisions for you. So the truth is, there are actually kind of a lot of right ways to do it. We do have like these little algorithms that you follow, right? You think of those little boxes, like if this, then this, is it this, or, and you kind of go down. But sometimes there's more than one path that is an acceptable way. And so I want women to read this and feel just a lot of agency over their bodies. Yes, some of it is limited agency. We can't change that I'm living in a 45-year-old woman's body, right? With the genetics that I have, or there are things that I can't change, but I do have a lot of agency over a lot of things. And so I'm hoping that this will be a tool for women to use as works and fits best for them, and that they can just feel empowered to do that. And I think being seen and heard and understood helps to empower women. And then I think all of this pertinent, evidence-based, gold standard of care, like best practices and guidelines, is also really empowering, because then you're not wading through kind of all the noise that's out there as well. So I really hope that women feel empowered at the end of it. And also like this sense of peace, like, oh, there isn't anything actually wrong with me necessarily. This is pretty normal. There may be some things going on, but I get to make decisions about my own body. And I have a provider who's going to help me, who's on my team. And so what are those decisions going to be? That I hope will bring a lot of peace to the women who finish the book and take it in and take the next steps from there.
Absolutely. I love that thought of you own this body is your unique body, and to recognize that. And like you said, to kind of filter through that noise, because people do make money off of
Yes.
all of these products.
Yeah.
So that evidence-based, research-based, this is something that's actually proven that it could help you with your unique situation that you actually have, versus just clicking on every, this promises that you're going to lose the stubborn belly fat in a week, or this
Right.
promises that you're going to sleep great, or, it can be, I think, easy to be tempted by all those, like, I'm going to click this and then
Well, it
this is
sounds
going to show up.
great.
Sounds great. Like, I'm going to take this
Yeah.
pill and then I'm going to sleep and not wake up or not have any of the anxious thoughts in the night, or
Yeah. It does.
whatever.
Yeah. Sounds great
Sounds,
to me.
it does. But like you said, to partner with
Yeah.
like a physician and to really figure out what's going on with you, that is empowering. I
Yeah.
hope people listening hear that, and that they understand that they do have agency over their body. They can
Sure.
take the steps needed.
Well, and that subtitle, A Woman's Guide to Health in the Body You Actually Have, that was so important to me. And it's important to note that what is healthy or best for one woman might be different for another woman. And so, whatever your limitations are, whatever your underlying chronic illness is, whatever your background genetics are, there's room for health for you. And so, it may look totally different. And I think that we get kind of on these tracks of, we know what healthy and fit looks like, right? And that may not be true for every woman, but you can take the body that you have and then you can work on health for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, kind of a side note, and then I'll get to the next question. So, I have autoimmune diseases that I've had
Mm-hmm.
for years. I was diagnosed with my first one when I was in college. And so, for me personally, I started to see a functional medicine doctor. Gosh, it's been a long time. But I have found what works for me. If I eliminate certain foods,
Yeah.
I have blood work done regularly where she checks certain things for me that are issues for me. And then I have certain supplements that I take. They're just things that are unique to me that have really helped. And so I personally have seen such an improvement in my health since I've become more passionate, I guess, about pursuing that healthy lifestyle, and recognizing that I just didn't want to put a blanket over it. Just like, well, I have autoimmune diseases. I just need to be on all of these medications for the rest of my life. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I'm not anti-medication at all. Like, I'm pro whatever anybody needs to live their best, most healthy life. But for me personally, I've been able to manage it just by removing certain foods and adding
Yeah.
certain other things. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but I do feel empowered in this moment in that area. Not
Yeah.
in all areas, but in that area. Um, because I found out what is unique to me. Why am
Yeah.
I having these issues? Why do I have all these autoimmune problems? And that's not the same for everyone. The reason I am might not be the same reason somebody else is. So I think it is, like you said, the body you actually have, that is so important. So important. Okay.
Yeah.
So, next question for you, Mikala. Midlife can be a time in life when people are maybe a bit harder on themselves or are sifting through what is actually important to them. How can people give themselves extra grace in this time of life when they are sifting and sorting through so much?
Yeah. Back to that grace word again, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. If we could move through our lives with that grace and remember it all the time, right? Oh gosh, what peace we would have. I wrote probably my favorite chapter in the book, and probably the one that I'm getting the most feedback about is the chapter on seasons of healing. And I think that's what this speaks to, is that, gosh, there are seasons when we are kind of on top of things, right? Maybe even thriving. We're doing well. We're able to take everything on. And then there are some seasons when we're not. We're going through something. Maybe some tragedy came up and just took us down for a while. And so there are just times when health looks different for us in those seasons. I tell a couple of stories in that book, one about a woman whose daughter is actively addicted and using drugs. And just like what she thought her life would be like and what the idea of like a good life looked like for her, and how I kind of offer this idea of semi-okay. And sometimes semi-okay is as good as we can get for a little while. And sometimes semi-okay, when you've like been in the middle of the pit, feels like it's a miracle, right? To call it semi-okay. And another woman that I talk about in that chapter who, had grown up in an abusive home, and then she married an abusive man. And so she had just lived most of her life with that and had eventually left her husband, and she and her daughter were living independently. And she had a lot of chronic medical illness, and would come in and see me, and we would take care of her blood pressure and her cholesterol, and she had pre-diabetes, and she was very overweight. She would fit into the obesity category. And in the book, I talk about the summer that she came in and told me about this camper that she and her daughter bought, and they'd been camping all summer and just having the best time, and they would go to different campgrounds, and she was glowing. She was so happy. And I remember just thinking, this is her thriving. And she does have chronic medical illness, and there probably are things that she could do better, right? She wasn't getting enough exercise by the world standards, right? And her weight wasn't at goal by the world standards, but like this was thriving for her. And
I love that.
yeah, yeah. And so she was in a season of healing from physical abuse and emotional abuse, and like sometimes that is kind of the most important thing. And I think that means that we offer a lot of grace for one another. We offer a lot of grace for ourselves to say, this is the season I'm in.
Yes.
And how do I take care of myself in this current season? Knowing that seasons change, right? And so sometimes our goals for health and wellness and a good life, those change. Sometimes they move kind of up and down the ladder, right? And I think it takes a lot of grace to recognize that and allow us to be fully in those seasons.
Yeah. And hearing you talk makes me think, do you think comparison comes in the way of that a lot? Because I was
Oh,
just
for
thinking
sure.
how, like, one, you're looking at your season and somebody else, it seems like maybe they're supposed to be in the same season, but we can't really see everything that's happening in people's lives, right?
Right. Right. So if we kind of use like the world standard or the idea of ideal to always put ourselves up next to and measure ourselves against, we're never going to measure up, right? And so I think like we are the person that we measure ourselves against. And again, I think that comes down to a lot of grace. Like, I don't think we need to really compare to anything. We need to just be in the season that we're in. But yes, that isn't how the world often works. That isn't the messaging that we're sold and told all of the time, right? I, as a
Yeah.
provider, probably should have said to this woman, you're doing great, but your blood sugar is still high. And so you should lose 20 pounds. And that means you should get out there and exercise and you should do all these things. And gosh, like I just remember that day when I was like, you are doing amazing. What a
Yeah.
fun summer you've had with your daughter. And that's awesome. That's
What
so
a, what a
wonderful for you.
what a gift for you to acknowledge and see like
Yeah.
she is thriving and to
Yeah.
celebrate her thriving instead of piling, more things that,
More
you
things to
could.
do, more ways you're not measuring up, all the ways you're not
Yeah.
meeting the ideal. And, maybe there would be another season when she would come and say, I'm ready to get on top of this weight stuff, or I really want to start. And then great. That's the time to jump in and help. I talk in there about there are times I want everyone to quit smoking. I think everyone should quit smoking, but there are times with a patient that I have said, I don't think this is the season. You're going through this divorce. You've got all this going on. There's so much stress right now. It's like a setup to fail. So this may not be the season. So maybe try a few things. You could try cutting down, or you could try changing some patterns or something to make it easier down the road. But let's not do it right now. Let's revisit it in 6 months and see where you're at that time.
I've sat across from you as a friend. I've had coffee with you. I have not sat across from you as your patient, but hearing you say that just says that you are an incredible provider, because there are times I know, even as a patient, where I felt like they need to move quickly with me, which I understand that,
Yeah.
there's a lot of pressures, there's a lot going on. Like I understand that, but just to hear that you're really seeing your patients where they are and hearing what they're telling you about their life, and not just saying, well, this is what I'm supposed to say, so I'm just going to tell you, you have to quit everything right now. Because like you said, that can be setting somebody up for failure, where then they walk out if their marriage is failing, and then now they're failing at what you've told them to do. And I just think that we should all treat people that way. Like, what are they going through? What is happening that's unique to them right now? Maybe they don't need my advice. Maybe they don't need me trying to fix something for them. Maybe they just need me to sit with them in this space, acknowledge what they're going through, and just be there. I love that. So another thing I want to talk about while I have you here for this time is the isolation that people can experience in midlife in particular. It can be an isolating time. So what do you want to say to the person who is feeling alone in midlife? And are there any resources that you would like to offer them while they're feeling kind of that isolation, or maybe not sure?
Yeah, it is really a hard time, and it is really isolating. And I think everyone is so busy all the time with all of these things that it's hard to actually connect sometimes. And then we feel lonely, and we know we're supposed to have this village of people, and not very many people have this village. And we're like, where is this village that people have been talking about? So it is really hard. And I hope that my writing and the book and resources and things that I offer on the website just is this hand to just say, I know, and I feel it too sometimes, and I'm here with you. I do think isolation and loneliness is like an epidemic. And we know that social connection is just as important as how we're feeding ourselves and how we're exercising and how we're getting sleep. Like, as humans, we need social connection. And so I do have a chapter in the book about the team that God builds for us. And I just want to extend the idea of your team is bigger than you think, I think. I know I grew up with the idea that I should have this circle of close girlfriends, and we all live nearby, and we watch each other's kids, and we get together as couples and have barbecues every weekend. And I don't have that. I would love that, but I don't have that.
I don't think that's reality for a lot of people.
Yeah. And people will say, like, go find your people. But I do think your team is bigger than you realize. And so it is an exercise that I encourage people to do in the book, is sit and list out your team. And
that's great.
Yeah, all the people who've shown up for you, and just from years back. So I would include a few really special teachers who I think now, looking back, I'm like, oh, that was my team member for sure. Maybe family members, neighbors. I would include, there's a couple women on the path. I walk every day on this same path. So I go with my neighbors on Monday, which interestingly, I don't really see those two neighbors throughout the week. Like, we do that one thing together. I could call them if I needed them, I think, but we're not having barbecues and going out. We do that one thing. But every day on the path I walk, and I see these two same women on different days. And we stop and we say hello, and we, just, how are you? And whatever, for maybe 10 seconds of interaction. And I'm like, they like to see me and I like to see them. And it's like this little reminder that there are other people doing life also, that they have very full and intricate lives just like you. And then our paths cross, right? Or the same gal that I see at the grocery store every time I go to the grocery store, which is also almost daily. And I comment on her earrings. Right. That's how that goes. But she has different like holiday earrings that she wears. And I'm always like, oh, I love your fall earrings. And we just say a little hello. Like your team is your kids' coaches and your kids' teacher, the people who come into contact with your little circle and would notice if you weren't there, or you interact with them in some way and they interact with you. Your team is actually bigger than you think. And so I really think we only need like one or two or three people in our inner circle. And then we have all these other peripheral people. And so I just think it's an important exercise to sit down and do. And I think it's okay to feel lonely sometimes. And maybe it doesn't look the way you thought it would be, or you don't have that close relationship that you thought you would have. But there are a lot of people who care about you and who love you and notice you. And so, we say it all the time. You aren't alone, but you aren't. You aren't.
What a beautiful exercise. And I bet a lot of people would be blown away if they actually took the time to do that, to think of all of those people that you come in contact with on a regular basis that would notice, like you would notice if those two women that
Yes.
you have that few, second interaction with, you would notice if they weren't walking,
Yes.
they make an impact on you. You see them, you notice them.
Yes.
So I just think that there would be so much value if everybody listening could take a moment, especially in those seasons when you're feeling lonely. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with feeling lonely. We need to feel our feels. But then if you get into
Yeah.
that, I kind of dark, like that really sad spot where nobody sees me, nobody cares. Do I matter? Well,
Yeah.
yes, you do. But yes, you
Sure.
do. Write those down. That is a fantastic exercise. And I'm going to do that, Mikala. I'm going to
Yeah.
do that. Like, I feel
Good.
like that would be a really great thing to do. And even to think about the people in the past. Like you said, you're thinking of
People
your
in the past.
old
Yes. And
teachers,
I think
neighbors.
that part for me makes me realize. So I write in that chapter about this woman who was a nurse practitioner, and I did an SDD clinic with her in the evenings during my training for several weeks. And it was in November, actually, because I remember it was around Thanksgiving. And she affected me in this way, just how she was with people and how she was with her patients. And my backstory is that my husband is a recovering drug and alcohol addict. And I went to one of my Al Anon meetings, and this woman was there. And she stood up to speak, and she recognized me and I recognized her, and she kind of winked at me, and then she told the kind of her backstory. It wasn't her regular meeting that she went to, but she was doing a little fill-in meeting before she went out of town. And I in the book, I sort of explained this woman became like the captain of my team,
Ah,
because I
I
just
love
saw
that.
her in this light, and I had been observing her, and she was, her children were teenagers and mine were just little babies. But listening to her talk to her children on the phone one day, because they were coming home for Thanksgiving from college, and then getting to see her and hear her backstory. And I just thought, oh, this is what I want to be when I grow up. And I bet she doesn't even really remember it, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
so she has no idea that I am like, wow, you're like the captain of my team. I don't see her anymore. That was it. That was our last interaction. And so I think doing that also makes you aware of the way you've been able to maybe touch other
Mm.
people's lives. That there have been small interactions, maybe with someone younger than you or someone who is struggling, and you changed their life somehow because you've had those people do that, other people do that for you. And so we really are all so interconnected. And there are some times when we're the person lifting up or offering help. And then there are times when we are just desperate for help and attention, or need something. And we feel that for each other. And that is this big team that God has created just for you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And it's encouraging to think that we all leave an impact, whether we
Yeah.
realize it or not. Like you said, she
You may
might,
never know.
you'll never know that she was the captain of your team, but what an impact she had
Yeah.
on you. So it's encouraging
She,
to think we can be that for somebody else too. It really, I think embracing that can really change how we interact with people, you know?
yeah. Yeah, she told this really beautiful story. You take your turn to go stand up there. And I remember thinking, like, this is crazy that I'm getting to hear this about this woman that I'd only known, professionally, but had already sort of noticed how wonderful she was with people. And she was telling that story and she kind of landed on my face and she gave me a little wink. And I just thought, oh gosh, she just doesn't even know the impact that she had on me in my life. And
Are you a winker now? Do you wink at people now?
I don't. I don't. But I loved it, and I just thought, "Thank you." It was such a hard time in my life, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
What a sweet and precious gift. Well, before we close out, I just want to ask you, is there anything else in relation to grace or midlife that you would like to share with our audience, with the people that are listening?
yeah, I midlife is really hard, and we're navigating a lot of things, and there are just all these different facets to our health and to our wellness and to our lives. And I think grace is just the way through, right? We have to kind of carry it all with grace for ourselves, for these bodies that we actually have, for our family members, our teenagers, right? We have to kind of cover all of that with grace. And if we can remember to do that, oh, there's so much peace available to us here. I don't know, I came upon midlife thinking, man, that's going to be rough, right? And it
Yes.
is kind of, but it is so beautiful too. I wouldn't go back. I love the person that I am now, and I love all the things I've learned, like the really long, hard way. And I love watching who my children are becoming and watching them grow into these new people. And so there's so much beauty here.
Yeah.
And I think when we are walking through with grace and putting grace all over it, it's like, man, we notice that beauty so often. So I hope
Goodness.
that that's encouraging.
Incredibly. Well, and I remember feeling like midlife is going to be this thing, like you said, like I'm going to
Well,
just be
yeah.
raging at everybody and I'm just going to be
Yeah.
sweating constantly. And like, everything I thought about it was really negative, like kind of
Negative.
terrifying.
Right. I'm not going to want to have sex anymore. No one's going to think
Yeah.
I'm pretty. I'm just going to be wrinkled. And, like,
Just
I just thought it
dry,
was
like my skin's going to flake off me everywhere I
like
go.
it's the end of I don't know. But that hasn't been the case at all. There've been some really hard things. And
Yeah.
there are things that are difficult to walk through. And it is so much more beautiful here than I thought. So,
Yes. Amen to that, Mikala. Well, before I tell people how to find you, I just did want to read something. There's so many things I love in your book. Um, but I just wanted to read this little list of things when we were talking about the grace that we need to give ourselves. And this really resonated with me. Um, it's a list of the things that we think that we kind of need to be doing. Definitely paraphrasing, but here's what we have: work a full time job with a lucrative salary, manage a perfect household, keep an impeccably clean, organized, and beautifully decorated home, contribute to our neighborhoods and churches in creative and exciting ways, spearhead ministry work and volunteering. Remember to practice that all important self care, i.e., maintain a smoke and hot bath for regular sex with our spouse. Be productive outside of motherhood while simultaneously raising perfect prodigy children as the primary caregiver and nurturer of a loving home. Succeed at basically everything, everywhere, while also managing to care for a sick child at home who wants his mother, and do it all without help or support. You nailed it. You nailed it. I read
I
that
mean,
and I was
that's
like,
just a brief list of what we should be doing, right? Just a small, you know, what's the
oh,
big deal?
oh my goodness, you nailed it. And then and the next page, you mentioned this paragraph. I just think it's so beautiful. It says, but sometimes if I breathed in too deep or too wide, I felt like I might burst. I moved frantically through my days, taking shallow breaths and sucking in my stomach and trying to smile and appear calm, collected, and successful without ever fully breathing. I was managing it. I was a strong woman. See, I was doing it all. So beautiful, friends. I am telling you, this book is a must read. I think for everyone. You don't have to be in midlife because it's coming. Even if you're in your 20s, 30s, you know, this is coming. And I think for people who are already even past it, there is just so much wisdom to glean from this book. So, Mikala, where can people find you? Where can people are going to want to hear more from you. How do people find you?
Yes. Well, thank you for reading that. I appreciate all of that. I am over on Facebook and Instagram at Mikala Albertson MD. I also have a fun Instagram page called Be Well-ish, and it really is just women's health topics. So I don't tell a lot of my personal stories, but I just go through all of the women's health topics and kind of help people wade through the guidelines and things like that over there in a healthy way. And then I have a website, MikalaAlbertsonMD.com, with lots of free resources and further reading there. And you can find the book anywhere books are sold.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mikala, so much for your time and for doing this not only once, but 1.5 times.
1.5. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, it means I got to talk with you a little bit longer. So I loved it. Thank you so much.
I love you, friend. You're a gift. Everybody check out Mikala. You will be very happy you did. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to my interview with Dr. Mikala Albertson. Be sure to visit and sign up for her website at MikalaAlbertsonMD.com. When you sign up for her monthly love notes, you'll receive all kinds of wonderful, encouraging, and informative free resources. Also, if you like what you heard today and would like to hear more, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. For more of my content, you can also find me at JenThompsonAuthor.com and TrulyYoursJen.com. I am also on Facebook and Instagram at TrulyYoursJen. Be sure to tune in next week for my conversation on all things teens, tweens, and grace with my friend, the author of You'll Make It and They Will Too, Everything No One Talks About When You're Parenting Teens. The exuberant, fun, and oh so very talented Amy Betters Midman. I loved our conversation, and I know you